Peter Parker is a pretty charming guy. He can't help it, and he's incredibly endearing not just to readers too. The web-slinger has had plenty of admirers over the years, and today we're counting some of them down with our list of the top 10 superheroes Spider-Man is hooked up with. We'll also be avoiding talking about Mary Jane Watson, Gwen Stacy, and any of their alternate versions that have knocked boots with Peter over the years. So with that in mind, let's get to our list. Starting us off in at number 10, Carol Danvers. No one really wanted Peter Parker and Carol Danvers to be a thing, but that's still what we got. And in Ms. Marvel Volume 2, Issue 34, Peter asks Carol out, which she said yes to since he had helped her when she was depowered. Tad forceful of him. Then in issue 47 of her solo series, the two of them actually went out on a date at an upscale restaurant, and it is pretty painful to watch, until the date is interrupted by supervillains, thank god. The pair take them out, then end up eating chili dogs on a roof that overlooks the city. Later, it would continue to get weird between the two of them when they teamed up to fight Mac Gargan's Venom. But quite frankly, we're really glad this relationship never really hit the ground running. It's definitely one we can do without. In at number 9, Rogue. In the world of X-Men Forever, which takes place on Earth 161, we got to see a romance blossom between Spider-Man and Rogue. This Rogue had absorbed Nightcrawler's powers, which also changed her to look a lot more like him physically, which did not bode well with her. After that went down, she found herself crossing paths with Spider-Man after dealing with a robbery in New York. Feeling a little lost, she decided to spend the night with him, accompanying him on his patrol, which led to sparks between the two. They actually almost kissed, and would've if it wasn't for being interrupted by the screams of a nearby Jean Grey. Up next, number 8, Spider-Gwen. Okay, so I know we said we wouldn't be talking about alternates of Gwen Stacy with Peter Parker, but this alternate of Gwen had her sights set on a different man in the Spider-Man mantle. We're talking Miles Morales. Spider-Gwen is the Gwen Stacy aka Spider-Woman of Earth 65. Now under the Marvel Now line, she and Miles would get romantically involved with one another. And side note, their Earth 8 alternates even got married. They starred in a story titled Sitting in a Tree, in which their two titles crossed over and made for a story that had our hearts pitter-pattering all the way through. I mean, how could you not ship them? They're so cute together. I mean, unless you're actually one of those people who shipped Miles and Kamala Khan, in which case I am very sorry for your loss. In at 7, CARLI Cooper. CARLI Cooper is another exception on our list. She first appeared in the 2008 Amazing Spider-Man issue 545. She's a forensic specialist who ended up dating Peter after he and MJ broke up after the One More Day story event. Now the two of them had a bit of a slow burn flirtation before they finally went out on a date together. Eventually though, she would figure out that Peter was Spider-Man, and growing tired of his lies to her, she broke up with him. While she wasn't a superhero when they were dating, she would eventually become a villain briefly, operating under the name of Monster, gaining powers from the Goblin formula that gave her superhuman strength, speed, and stamina. Up next, number 6, Betty Brant. Betty Brant is a civilian character that Peter has dated in the past. She first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 4 in 1963, dated Peter briefly, but then would go on to date Flash Thompson. But once upon a time, in What If Volume 1 issue 17, she was actually a superhero, appearing in the story What If the Radioactive Spider Had Bitten Someone Else. Now, as you can imagine, in this hypothetical tale, Peter was not bitten by the radioactive spider, but Betty was, giving her his powers. She confides in the civilian Peter, and he begins to assist her, essentially acting as a sidekick of sorts to her Spider-Woman, or rather, the Amazing Spider-Girl as she preferred to be called. And at one point she fails to stop a criminal from escaping, which leads to the death of Peter's Uncle Ben. Now because of this, she gives up fighting crime altogether, but Peter still goes on to become Spider-Man, with synthetic powers of course. Moving on to number 5, Marrow. Mutant Marrow and Spider-Man had a brief entanglement after Marrow was brainwashed to be a sleeper agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. Operating under the alias Sarah Rushman, which fun fact was a previous alias of Black Widow's, she had a bit of a split personality, in which Marrow would terminate life model decoys, and then Sarah was a college kid at Empire State University. That's where she developed a crush on Peter, who was lecturing there, and the two ended up going out on a few dates before he realized who she truly was. Eventually that would dissipate, with Parker helping her break free from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s control by faking her own suicide in a Spider-Man Marrow one-shot crossover from 2001. Up next at 4, Silk. Silk, aka Cindy Moon, first hit the scene in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 1 volume 3. The character was bitten by the same radioactive spider as Peter was, but from there on out suffered a different kind of tragic origin story than what Parker had endured. She was kidnapped and forced to train inside of a bunker, where she was held captive by a mysterious man named Ezekiel in an attempt to hide her from Morlun, who was killing off spider-powered peeps. Eventually Peter learned of her existence, and when she was free, the two couldn't help but notice that they were super attracted to one another. Unnaturally so, it was intense. Turns turns out it was actually a product of their pheromones, with the two of them overcome by primal urges to jump each other's bones. They eventually had to part ways because these urges were just too strong and too overwhelming, hindering their efforts to fight crime and just exist. Cindy would go on to begin her own costume superhero career separate of Peter. In at number 3, Kitty Pryde. Peter's relationship with Kitty Pryde isn't one that took place in the 616 universe, but rather on Earth 1610 in the Ultimate Universe. During Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, Kitty develops a crush on Peter when Spider-Man and the X-Men team up in Queens to take down the Latverian mutant Geldof. After being charmed by the web-slinger, Kitty asked him out on a date. Over the course of their relationship, they would work together to take on villains, and eventually Peter started to feel some tension about the fact that Kitty's X-Men persona was way more public versus the secret identity that he had been striving to maintain. Eventually though, the two break up, which did not go smoothly. But luckily over time they made amends, with them even becoming good friends after the fact. And at number 2, Silver Sable. A sometimes antagonist, sometimes ally of Spider-Man's, Silver Sable, who was introduced in 1985's The Amazing Spider-Man issue 265, has never hooked up romantically with Peter in the 616, but there's certainly been lots of tension and flirtation to say the least. But we did get to see a glimpse of what that underlying sexual tension could amount to in What If Volume 2 issue 21, which was titled What If Spider-Man Had Married the Black Cat. Now in this story, Black Cat is accidentally murdered by Paladin, and Spider-Man ends up getting romantically involved with Silver Sable in the aftermath. They both bond over the grief they share of their dead loved ones. By the end, it is a bit ambiguous as to whether or not their relationship worked out in the long run. And last but not least, speaking of, we have Black Cat at number 1. Black Cat, aka Felicia Hardy, may have originally been a villain of Spider-Man's, now an anti-hero, but if anything, her criminality made the romantic relationship between her and Peter Parker that much more steamier. Created by Marv Wolfman and Keith Pollard in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 194, Felicia actually chose to become more of an anti-hero because of her relationship with Spider-Man, even becoming his partner for a while. Although she didn't care much for Peter Parker the civilian, she was way more into Spider-Man the vigilante, and one of the reasons why the two would split up was because of this. Now they've had an on-again, off-again relationship over the years, with Black Cat working as one of Spidey's biggest allies at their best, and her slipping back into the life of a criminal when they've been at their worst. Although that relationship between the two of them may have been tipped permanently into negative land, thanks to Otto Octavius running around in Peter's body as the superior Spider-Man, having broken Black Cat's teeth and abandoned her for the police to pick up. Definitely something that would make someone not want to be into you. Just saying. Alright, there we have it, friends. Who is your favorite person that Peter Parker has dated over the years? Give us a shout in those comments below. And let us know your thoughts and feels. If you guys dug this video, you know what to do. Hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd to see more videos just like this one. And be sure to click the playlist currently flashing on your screen for more lists just like this. In the meantime, thanks for watching, friends. I'll catch you all in the next video.